Alright, 1 minute before this meeting starts. So get ready. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Is everything connected? Need to dial into the meeting. What do I need to close? I don't need Outlook. It's gonna take up. Need to be on Trello. But which Trello? Regression testing. I will leave all of those open. That's interesting. What's it saying now? Screen. Testing, call in progress. Hello? Hello? Using custom. Hello, can you hear me? Let me see if it's my audio. Bear with me 1 second. Alright, stop presenting.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Hi, Louise. Yeah. I can hear you now. Did you make a change on your end, or was that me?
No, it was me. It's been all week, Dave. Or pretty much all week. When I've logged in to a call, there's just no sound at all, so I can't hear them, they can't hear me. And invariably, it just means I have to come out and then go back in.
It's one of those fear factors, because
Hey-ho.
you're not quite certain whether or not it's you or the other person. Is like, I just spent maybe 40 minutes just getting set up. So the idea that it was me is like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? So okay. So we have a session today. The good.
Paul's still off, unfortunately, so there's only me from our team. I don't know whether Michael's able to join us.
Michael's on holiday, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he is on leave actually, isn't he? Yeah. Oh, well, it's just the two of us then.
I think he's back on Monday, but the whole week I think he's supposed to be off on holiday. Okay, well, that being said, the good news is the app is a lot more stable than it would have been maybe about 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, if I was going to value the app and I was selling it to you 2 weeks ago in comparison to today, it would have been worth £1, and today it's worth £1 million. It's that significant a bit of difference. I mean, if we said that we've tackled maybe 40, 50 bugs, got those knocked out of the app, it means now that you can actually use it. Whereas before, it's test data in the database, so it load up on the screen. The flow of the app would be working off the data, which is what we want it to do. But it's the internal code that needs to be tested in terms of persisting all the different structures around surveys, all the different structures around work streams. And now that we've done that bit of work, the confidence is there to tell you that we're pretty much in good stead to go into production in the next. I think the target from here is roughly about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of where we are. So in terms of like the UI, you and Paul would be very familiar with it, even if it had bugs. If you couldn't find the bugs, that's fine. And a matter of fact, it might have been that the button's there, so it's like you don't have a reason to press the button. But if you did press the button, it might have worked in some instances for some scenarios. So what I'm doing is literally going through and saying, okay, for each potential type of question. So right here we're saying there are that's 5 different question types. Going through, putting a question in, and then do we need an other choice field, or do we need a comment choice field, and then making sure that the validation kicks in as it should. So if you try to overload a field, so say for example, in the database we only allow 300 characters, and one of the ladies was to enter 400 characters, that would be a scenario that would break the app, right? But how often would you enter that much data? So in most instances, you could use this system for 3 years and never enter more than 300 characters in that field. But just that one instance where somebody did enter 301 characters, it'll be like, how does the app respond? So that's what I'm going through. I'm literally going through. It's like saying yes, trying to break the application, but at the same time, it's like, what are the things that the users potentially could do that we never ever want them doing, and then making sure that we put in the logic into the app so that we handle those kind of negative situations without the user having to think, why is it the app stop responding to the buttons when I'm pressing them, and things like that. So that's the good side of things. The other bit that's gone in this week, this red, amber, green against upcoming visits.
Okay.
Again, it's working off data in the system, so it's literally going in and setting appointments and then refreshing the report. So literally, it's only these specific practices that I've registered these appointments against, and it's literally just looking on the days and letting the user know how many days are outstanding, or days left, it says here, before this appointment is due. And so, because of where we are in terms of the project lifecycle and the idea that we're getting the app stabilized, ready for handover, it means then that whoever is going to take on this code will be able to look on the code and extend the functionality. Not necessarily have to go in and do a deep dive and try to understand what a work stream is and try to understand where the data is to get the events. No, I'm giving it to them in a fashion where it's like, okay, fine, I now need to add additional column or an additional field. I have all the data, I just need to add that specific data context based on whatever work request that you have coming in, to extend the functionality of the report.
Yeah.
Okay, so outside of that, right, so the, how can I call it? The project schedule has not been extended by any number of days. It's the same days that we're working with. All we've done is try to reorganize the time so that it's been, we're taking advantage of the time that we currently have, as opposed to just sticking with a rigid no, everything's in the swim lane, we have to do it, otherwise no. It's like, this is what we have left, and we're saying here that from Monday, yourself, Paul, Alice, whoever else is on the team, you should have a stable system in the test environment whereby you can start thinking about work streams. Maybe everybody gets a chance to start uploading the work stream. They don't have to get all their work stream ready. It's just familiarity with the system. Again, also survey creation, work stream creation, and then over a period of days, based on whatever work priorities you have and how much time you can allow the team members to actually work with the system, they can get a familiarity with what's there. They can potentially find bugs if there are any. Hopefully, there won't be any, but they potentially could find any issues. And at least I'm still around, so it means then that we have a bit of wiggle room in terms of being able to tackle any kind of last minute type gotcha scenarios. And in parallel, so it's the same timeline, just a different kind of work stream, because that would be more the technical bit where I'm saying, okay, fine, we have a test environment, we know that we can load the app into the test environment, so that part of it should be somewhat straightforward. But for the first time, we're going to be getting reports loaded into the test environment. So what we would need to be able to do is, one, lock down the reporting feature. So if you recall the other day where we were talking about these favorites and browse and being able to see things that only the administrator in theory should see, that's where some of that energy is going to be going. So hopefully, maybe even getting what we call the report viewer into the app that we've built. Now, one of the technical considerations that we have is that Microsoft hasn't built a report viewer that is necessarily compatible with the technology. Everything's coming from Microsoft, but this specific Blazor technology that we're using does not readily adapt to the report viewer. And so we have other means of trying to be clever, where we do have some Microsoft technology that will allow us to what we say host the report viewer. So when you look on the report with the parameters, that's a report viewer in its own right? So we're trying to take that report viewer and embed it in the app, so you wouldn't have to know another app to go to get the report viewer. It's there for you with the parameters, and you can export to all these other formats if you like, right? So you'll have your Word, your Excel, everything else. Not necessarily depending on whether or not you're doing an export to CSV will determine whether or not you're seeing the reporting in this fashion, right? But if you're going out to Word, you'd like to think that it'll be sending it to Word in that fashion, okay? And so that's where that energy is targeted for these 10 days. So the report server in the test environment. So when I go and send this through on day one, being the 31st, next Monday, you won't be able to launch the report. I'll need to be going through this exercise to get that ready over that 10 days in parallel. So maybe by the third day or so, you might have a version in the test environment where you'll be able to play with it in that format. And then, providing that we're able to make a basic survey. So a survey with 4 questions. I mean, that's like a 5-minute job, right? Everybody can do that. So ideally, it would be a real survey. So we're putting some real world functionality or test data behind there. And then on the back of that, work stream. So we know each member of the team has their own work stream that they focus for. So some are larger than others. So at least getting started with loading off the work streams into the test environment so that they can get that comfort factor in terms of working with the tool, seeing that it's not super sophisticated. It really is just about adding on the task or adding on the questions and things of that nature, and building that over time. And so on the back of that, then we're saying, providing nobody has any issues or finds any faults with the app, it just does what they expect it to do. Then at that point, by the 14th, so that's literally 2 weeks later, we're saying now we're looking to get everything loaded into the production environment, which is really that's a live environment, where then this is where the app will sit. If anybody wants to try out a technique or get familiarity with the system, they can do it in test environment. But if they're wanting anything to work with that will be contacting a member of the practice, working with the work streams, things of that nature, then at that point they'd be looking at the production environment. And so that should kind of bring us to a point where we're like, this is the fruition, this is the conclusion. This is us saying that the app is now going to go from having this long-winded version number to it's going to be a version 1. This is going to be a baseline for the app. It's gone live, and then ideally, any kind of wish lists or future enhancements. So you've been using the tool for a couple of months, then the system potentially can get work requests go through, and then obviously somebody would need to spend some time getting used to the app. For me, I can look on you and tell you how long something would take. It's one thing to look on the user interface, it's a whole different thing to look on something that was built by somebody else for a year and extend it. So I'm surprised that we don't have somebody in here from the team who is familiar with what we're trying to do. But I guess on Monday or the next time I have a chat with Mr. Rice.
Yeah, I think we can pick that up with Michael when he's back, because I suppose, yes, it would make sense at some point fairly soon to get someone involved who might be the person we'll go to at a point in the future, so that they've, like you say, they've got enough familiarity with it.
But the good thing here, and this is one of the things that I did touch on in my last session with Michael, is we're going to be doing, because I'm around until I think the 22nd, roughly about the 22nd, I think, of November. So once we get through with this specific element here, the idea here is that I'll be making, just some kind of quick videos. Because it's one thing documenting in text with a Word document on a system of this size. It looks small and trivial, but there's a lot of
there's loads of functionality to it, though, isn't there? From your end, that must mean there's loads and loads of developer
if you think
skill set required to do various different bits. I don't even know where you begin.
If you can appreciate, we stopped looking at the survey code base back maybe March. And I literally, between March and a week ago, I didn't have time to go and focus on surveys to the point to find bugs. So it was like going in and like, wait, there's a bug there. But fortunately, the code base for the surveys and the code base for the work streams is very similar to a certain degree. So if I fix something with work streams, I can then look on what I did and then migrate that functionality back to surveys. But if I came in today and this was something that somebody else had coded, and I was asked to extend surveys or extend work streams, we're talking months. Because literally I need to speak with you to understand what surveys are, to understand what work streams are. Then I need to do a mind meld where I'm trying to map up what you're saying with the code that's there before I can touch anything. Because you can easily touch something with surveys and it affects how the survey is done. Because if you recall, when you're actually working on the editor context, that's different from what the end user would be working on. And that's not obvious. So it's two different code bases. And the same thing again for work streams. You make a change at the template level, but when you come to work with it, you're working at it at the mapping of the practice and the work stream. And it's like, that would take time. So literally, if I was an internal tech lead and I had a junior that had to be trained up on this, I'd give him 3 months. A junior. If I was taking on somebody who, I want to say 3 months, that's 3 months before I would assign him a bit of work to make a change. Somebody who has already coded with the Blazor technology, they'd be able to take up the technology relatively quickly So the issue wouldn't be understanding the technology. The issue would be understanding the business rules and the business requirements. So that would be spending time with yourself or Paul to be able to understand the business logic, um, and then from there being giving them time, maybe not 3 months for them, maybe about a month, to be able to understand certain features. Just doing like what you do, play with the user interface. But then the user interface is hiding a lot of technical complexities. But again, that that would be something that would just, it's just time on the ground. But the idea here is day one, if if you had the system for 3 years, if what you're happy with day one, no one should really need to be changing the code significantly. Even on the actual nice to have pile, there no one should have to do some of these features. A lot of these features, like survey paging, for example, they don't need to understand the business logic to do that. They just need to know how to set up paging. So that would be business logic independent. They should just be able to get in there and start coding something like that. A matter of fact, from this nice to have list, some of these I've even started to put in, because even though it's nice to have, it's like no, you'll have a bug in here, you'll have a hole in the app if we don't implement that. And so the whole idea here is, if we get to version 1, I'd like to think there are 0 bugs, or at least there are 0 bugs that can be found, which means the system will be stable, right? I think, if anything, based on what I have visibility of, the areas that potentially will need attention from another member of the team would be around reports. Reports that, like, say for example, I'm having conversations with Max 20 now, and they're like, you need to deliver dashboards with star rating, and I'm like, that's the eConsult data. That's eConsult is no longer in the picture, or we're saying then we're not doing any work on this eConsult integration because we understand that they might not be with the company long term or something like that. But from a paperwork perspective, they're like, no, this must happen. So if it did come to a point where eConsult was back in the picture and we're talking about statistics and dashboards and things of that nature, then that should be something that can be done. Again, the statistics from eConsult, they're already done. It's just a case of being able to place widgets on the user interface, so in a dashboard style fashion, or whoever would potentially be supplying this third party statistics in the future, something like that. But I don't have visibility of potentially where you would want to be further from where we are now past version 1. That was a full, what, half an hour? No, but that's the point. It's like, how can I put it? It's not exactly my place to be telling you all of these things. I would like to think, Michael, I would expect Michael to know and at least give you that kind of briefing so that you're aware of, okay, this is where we are now. Where can we be in 3 to 6 months? So the way how I've been working for pretty much the majority time that we've been engaged is not necessarily in project mode. It's like you always hear me say agile, 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 which is why I say to you, tell me what you want. Tell me what you want the system to do. But the second a line is drawn in the sand and it's like, it's cut off points now, we need to go into production, I need to go into project mode, in the sense that it's literally, there is no wiggle room. It's literally code freeze. And when we say code freeze, what we're saying here is you can test and you can fix bugs, but you can't spend time adding new features, because that could be introducing bugs in its own right.
And then you need to make sure that you're stable with everything.
Exactly.
Making it potentially unstable. Yeah, I totally understand that.
So if you see me kind of switch, it's how can I say? I'm doing that to protect you because on one hand, it's like putting together these reports. It's fun, it's fast. It's like seeing where all the work went because that's what you want. It's like how Paul calls it. He doesn't call it the app. He calls it the reporting tool. So all that energy for 12 months building the app was so you could get these reports, right? And so the idea that we hear now and then there's a line in the sand is like, no, this is the fun bit. It's like putting together this report took half a day, which means then that providing that you know the vision for the data that's being collected in the system, um, whoever is going to be able to move with this, if they're working in a data warehousing mindset already, putting this stuff together is not super complicated. So there's once they get a bit familiar with data, so they're not changing the app. They're analysts, they're data analysts. So for them, this is their bread and butter. The functionality is all about being able to understand what the data context is. That would be speaking with you, speaking with Paul, and then on the back of that going away and then drafting a version 1 for the report, getting that in front of you, and then responding to any kind of change request coming through. So it's no longer project mode where there's an issue with cost. It's no, there is technical expertise in-house that understands data. For them, if they're not thinking about the app, they're only thinking about the data that's been collected. That's not complicated, right? It's literally just presentation of information in a reporting format. Whereas extending the app requires expertise, knowledge of what's already been built over a 12-month period, which is why I'd be asking for time. So if I didn't build this app and you asked me day one, this was my first day in, and you said, could you go off and build us an additional screen to do this, or could you look on the diary events and change it and make sure that if they change, they update the other event? That analyst will need they need to be sandboxed and given time to understand what was already built before they can change it. So for me, making changes to surveys, which I built months ago, I really have to think about what I'm doing, because you can make a little change and think that that change is in isolation of other parts of the system, and that's not the case. You make a change there, and if you don't make the change in a second place, it breaks something. And that again, a senior guy coming in would understand that. Somebody who's like has experience doing a tech lead, which you do have tech leads in house who are really smart. There's the people I've been introduced to who work on in-house systems already. They seem quite geared up, quite smart. I won't call names because I don't want to get political, but I do know that you have some really smart guys in-house already. And so don't think I'm not emotional about what we're building and on what's been built. This is not easy for me to just rip my heart out and walk away. I'm finished with this. That's not the case. Cards have been dealt, and I understand why that is. It's just more. It's that kind of experience where you've been through that cycle, and then you have to do a handover. And it's like a surgeon that's used to saying somebody's died, right? The first couple of times it's really hard, but you do it for 10, 15 years. You kind of numb to it, and it's just something that you have to do. So I understand that the part of the life cycle when you get to the end is literally handover, and it's like it is what it is, it's that kind of sound.
Especially when you've worked on something for as long as you've worked on this. It's
Well,
yeah.
you saw what was happening there. It's like you're coming through for the report. I'm like, yes, tell me what you want, and I'm ready to jump in. It's like
I know.
Michael's like, no, Dave, let's have a chat. It's like, it's like, oh, right, okay, yeah. It's just what it is, and so it's just a life cycle. I was here thinking I was going to see you all guys, turn gray and we all go to each other's each other when everybody gets sick and things like that. But
Oh,
yeah, it is what it is. It was kind of like that at his in Stafford. Um,
oh, okay.
the development manager there, I think he broke his back, and so he couldn't come to work anymore. So for the 3 years as there, we didn't have a development manager. And so it's almost like we weren't left to our own devices. We had a business manager who was an interim dev manager, but there was a very family atmosphere there because a lot of the team had been together for years. So it was like I was just that guy, the extra set of hands that came in. Um, but yeah, it's just a life cycle. But the good thing, and I'm going to draw this to a conclusion now. The good thing is that we're leaving the situation in a stable format for which no one should be concerned. It should be a case of the system is stable. It does what we tasked it to do, what we wanted to get built. There are little things that it would be nice to implement if time allows, and that's specifically the workflow around events and event dates. Um, so right now you can register diary events. This is what we're looking at here now. But if somebody was to come in and say change this first visit, which is supposed to take place 43 days from now, but they wanted to either move it forward or move it, further, then these appointment dates should shift accordingly as well, relative to that. So I know Paul had mentioned that maybe in at least the last session that we had, maybe about 2 weeks ago. But it's just a case of that that can be done. It's not super complicated to do it. The concern is, will that introduce any bugs? That's the real key thing. Whereas if I leave it like that now, it'll just work, right? One of the concerns that we have with this specific where we are with the implementation is, the system doesn't stop you from adding multiple first visits. All of these events, you could have 100 of them essentially, right? Whereas it would be nice to say, if you already had a first visit and you tried to add a second visit, the AI would know, right, search for the first visit if it's already there, and if it's already there, then update it with the new date. Otherwise, just create a new one. So, like I said, it's not super sophisticated business logic. It's just, let's stabilize the app first, get it into the test environment, have you and the team get a look on what's there, get that comfort factor to say, wait, this is great, it actually works, there are no bugs, right? And then, depending on how much time that I have, because I mean, literally, it's 3 weeks, but you can get a lot of work done in 3 weeks. So if I'm saying we're going into report deployment, we need to get it hosted so it can be embedded in the app. That would be the target. If we can't, then at least we've deployed it to the test environment. Once that's integrated with the actual app itself, we can potentially look at putting that in. I think that based on what's on the nice to have pile, that's the only critical thing as far as business logic that has not gone in yet. And I'll be trying to get that resolved. I have resolved some of these bugs, so I need to either cross them off if I've done that. And then again, some of these features are features that were introduced while we were doing the milestone. So like this comment workflow, if we recall, we talked about doing almost like a chat app with the between the facilitators and the business change coordinators. But again, it's nice to have, right? And so what's already there, the ability to add at least a comment and edit the comment box, that's already there. So there is an implementation sort of, but it's like, this is nice to have. It's a project. It's a government project. So, if the line's been drawn, the line's been drawn. That is what it is. But I have spoken for about 3 hours now. So, What would you say? I mean, obviously we've not walked through the app, but we've done walking through the
No,
app
no, but that's
quite a lot.
fine. So, as far as we're concerned, Alice is teed up to do whatever needs to be done in the way of testing. She's looking forward to being able to get stuck into testing that out for us. So she'll be able to help. She'll be free next week if you need to do any training, foods, etc. She doesn't work Wednesdays, but other than that,
Does she have a work
that's fine.
stream? Does she have a work stream?
Well, she works on systems optimization, so excuse me, one sec.
System optimization. She's techie.
Yeah, so it would have been eConsult.
Right.
So that kind of looks at our systems and solutions. So she was eConsult before she went on maternity leave. Now, she is now. She's come back actually.
Well, that's good.
Different. It's just such a wide area that I'll keep her on the same thing. But she's got time because she hasn't got stuck into anything yet. She's only been back a few weeks.
Right.
She's got capacity, so rather than put her on other projects for now, I'm going to put her onto this so that we've got dedicated resource
Okay.
who can help you and Paul. So if you can give her the run-throughs that you need to, she can just crack on with testing then.
Okay.
And for the timescales that we've got, we can just basically free her up to do testing of the solution right the way through so that we make sure we've got our best chance of not going over on those timescales. But yeah, I think other than that, everything looks fine. Totally understand what you're saying about not wanting to build more functionality in now and all the rest of it. And I would agree, actually, we need to just get it up and running and start playing with it because we might not need some of the stuff we're thinking of once we start using it anyway.
Oh, it's a
You have
good.
to start using it at some point, don't you?
Well, that's it. The fear factor is that we deliver it to test, we get it to production, we're going to the Christmas period, and then we start January, and it's like, what does that system do again? It's like, provided we at least get one survey, even if it doesn't go out to the practice, but the building of the survey template, getting that muscle memory, somebody's key that in, they understand, oh, right, this is really straightforward, right? And then the same thing for the work stream. So Paul getting, getting comfortable with what's there. It's that thing of, if you're going to do training, if you don't implement that training within 3 months, the knowledge of the system becomes something a bit archaic and, oh my God, what was that thing, right? Whereas,
The good thing
go on.
as well is that most of my team are trainers. They know the importance of doing all of that. Use it as soon as you've trained on it.
Yes.
You lose the memory.
Yeah, and especially when we're talking about primary care, it's like I went to do some searches for data for primary care to be able to start, crafting some kind of a survey earlier, and I found some information for I think it was dementia or something like that. And as I'm keen,
yes.
there's so much thought that goes behind this. That it's common sense, but it's very medical, very relevant to a medical environment. So if you're not with that kind of mindset, a lot of what you're looking at is kind of abstract and, oh my God, what is this? And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get that test data going in around the digital assurance and digital inclusion, because it's like, this is not run-of-the-mill information. It's very specific to what you do within your teams. And without seeing it, it's just abstract. It's just a question or it's just a task. Whereas no, it's, even though we're calling work streams, these are really large projects that need to be implemented, 130 plus practices, right? And as long as you can get your head around that, then the data and the workflow and why they ask the questions they ask and why the data needs to be presented in that fashion, then it kind of comes into its own. But for the longest while, it's like we were having that conversation. We're saying, oh, it's a 3-tier data: work streams, work packages, task, and you had even other terminologies for some of these things. But it's like it's kind of bedded itself down over time, and so it's like just trying to get yourself into that kind of mindset. But
Mm.
that being said, today is what, the 27th. We have tomorrow Friday. What I want to spend the energy looking at tomorrow is the emailing features and the workflow with the templates. So
Mhm.
even though we've done some testing already, I just like to, dot the I, cross T, make sure that those templates, because I have, yesterday I did some work to clean them up, make sure that work streams don't have survey tags don't have work stream tags. But anytime you change code, you then need to test the implementation, and the sending off emails requires that I test that workflow. And so because emails is a bit more, how can I say, it's not you just press the button and emails go. There's an email queue, and then depending on whether it's resources or work streams and work plans and things like that, different data comes into its own context. So I'd like to think that that shouldn't take too long, couple of hours. But that's one of two areas that hasn't been tested during this week. The other
Okay.
area is surveys. So I know I've done end-to-end testing in the past and see that the emails can be distributed, um, and then you get a link and then you can hyperlink back into the system. But because I've made changes to the surveys in the past couple of days, which is cleaning up, like I mentioned, migrating code from work streams back to surveys. If you change any code, you need to do a full cycle test to make sure that all the logic in the other places are still there. So I'll need to send at least one, yeah, at least one email out to myself for a survey, and then go into the survey portal and do a response. I'll probably do the dementia survey that's been built up. It's a very simple survey, 9 questions, but it has all the different kind of controls. So we have multi-choice here, single answer choice with comments. Also this ability here. So one of the things that wasn't in any of the tests for the past year was the ability to ask a question, knowing that you'll be able to respond to it, and not only, and please don't error. I just had this wonderful meeting here now. So then you could have 3 answers coming back, right? Um, and so this wasn't implemented before. Comment.
Okay.
So the idea that you could have the question with its own response as it is here now, but you could have 2 additional areas to collect information. Yes, we didn't get a bug, right? So
Oh, that's good.
I haven't had a lot of tests, but the idea you could have 3 fields, and again you could ask. You don't have to just put comment there. You could ask another question here, separate to this one, and then based on that ask another question. But the context is all wrapped at question number 9, right? So I mean, obviously not for this question. How can we contact you, right? But the idea here is that you could extend the capability outside of just comment and other. I didn't have to call that other. It could have something, another question, that if the answer to previous is X, then Y. That sort of thing. Similar to how the team has been working. Whereas how the team have been working in with the Excel templates that they use, you lose context. So this is question number 9, but for question number 10, they would say, if the answer to question number 9, then what about X? What about Y? Whereas you could do all of that, providing that you only need to ask 3 questions that are related by doing that workflow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, obviously you have the platform, the Smart Survey platform, and that's kind of where this logic and workflow came from. But in terms of having it implemented in here correctly, um, it's while doing the testing that we kind of going through and just making sure that we do have the logic wired in such a way that it'll flow correctly. But now that that's in on this side, as you recall, the survey portal is separate to this, and that hasn't been tested. So yeah, time needs to be spent, and so I'm going to be trying to get that part of the work. Look on that. So this is it's just going straight to thank you for doing the survey. It's not even logged into it. So yeah, that needs to actually. Well, no, but that's the point. That's the whole point of the test. If you change anything, this is the only survey on the system that only has one page, and that's just gone from the the login page, the start processing page, to this page. But something like that is going to be something like a -1 implementation or something straightforward. But that's why I need that's like I mentioned, those are the two areas that haven't been tested yet. And so tomorrow is going to be about emails and making sure that that workflow for the surveys is actually implemented and takes into account the changes that have gone in. Okay. So yeah, with that being said, Dave, with his 1 hour rant,
No, you're alright.
have you got any questions, any concerns, any thought
No,
process?
my only concern really is just to get started with the user testing that we need to do so that we can get as much out of the last kind of few weeks as we can. But you know, we've got the plan for that now. That's quite clear. You know, we're going to start with the training side of things next week, so that's fine. Have you got contact details for Alice and for Paul?
I have Paul's details. Alice,
Okay.
I don't think anything has come through for Alice
That's
just yet.
fine. I'll just put it here.
So on the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. So that's Alice's email address.
Okay.
Um,
I,
so yeah, I think that being the case, yeah, for me it's just a case of I want to get going as soon as we can with this training and testing, and make sure that they've managed to get through as much as possible of it all while we've still got you with us. But I feel relatively reassured about that because Alice is able to concentrate on that. She's able to put aside a lot of time to concentrate on that. So I don't think we'll have too much of an issue with the user testing side of things. I think it's just getting them going,
okay.
letting them, and just managing expectations. So what is it that you need to know from them while they're doing their testing? But you know, obviously, you don't need me to.
No, it's
You're going to communicate that with them. But it's, yeah, I suppose it's managing expectations. So what you need and when,
sure.
and what sorts of things you do and don't need to hear back from them.
Well,
But you know, they're both really good at what they do. So I think, you know, I don't foresee any issues with the testing side of things. I think they'll know what they're doing.
well, we spent a lot of
It's just
time.
getting on with it, then, isn't it?
We did spend a lot of time in the beginning. You, Paul, Michael made time for me. We went from an Excel document highlighting, you know, how the fields work for some of the reports. Unfortunately, eConsult went a slightly different way, but the energy wasn't wasted. We were able to get survey modules going, and also the workstream modules going. So the time that I did need yourself, Paul, in terms of being subject matter experts around primary care and how the department works, and that's been translated into the app now, and it's just kind of this. It's like I said to Michael, it's surgical strikes. So the time when we need to do a lot of coding and stay up till late at night or get up early in the morning, that kind of bit's done and dusted now. Right now,
Yeah.
a lot of the bits where you see me saying in the Scrum emails that it's fail, it's the word fail sounds quite harsh, but if I had a tester, I'd probably be incredibly stressed out right now because their attitude is very different. They'll just do if they test, if there are 15 things to test and they find one bug, sometimes they won't even test anything else. They say this is rubbish. You need to go away and do it. And so how can I put it? I recognize that kind of pressure, and it's needed to a certain degree. So it's like saying to your own self, putting on the hat as a tester and saying, look, when I press that button, it didn't do what I expected to do, or what was saved is missing an extra character here, or they can save too many fields to that field in the database. You're going from 300 characters to 3,000, or from 3,000 to 300, and just it sounds more harsh than it is. It's just very, how can I say, it's surgical strikes. It's just little things that need to be chiseled out, and that only took 10 minutes to fix that bug, or that one took 3 minutes, and so if I give you a list and say, wait, that's 50 things, no, 3 of the things were critical and showstoppers, but the other 47, those were very cosmetic. I think that's the best way of being able to put it. A lot of them are cosmetic things that it's like the end user might never press that button, or the end user might never make that selection, but why is it a selection in the first place? It's misleading, right? If it's something that's not supposed to be used, remove it. But listen, I'll talk all day. So no, thank you, thank you. I mean, unless you had any additional questions for me now. Right now, it's like, just trying to utilize what time we have left. I say the next 10, 11 days, there's work to do, right? Like you said, Alice and Paul Monday, but I'll get in touch with them and get them set up in test environment. Paul will, I guess, be able to bring Alice up to speed. If Alice does want to make any or have any time with me, then I'll make some time for her for that as well. Try and be as flexible as possible. But the real thing here is making sure that the test environment for reporting, that's been implemented in the test environment. And like I said, trying to integrate that with the app itself. If there are some technical issues with making that happen, well, we still know that reporting services will work as a standalone thing. That might need Paul Williams to assist us with the addressing. So just like how you have tests.digital optimization as a URL for the test environment, we might need a test.reporting. Now, if I recall, going back to when the test environment was set up, that was implemented, but they were having some issues with the server, with the log files, 250 meg every night being generated, which is not normal. That could have just been a patch from Microsoft, or some kind of a service pack that needed to be installed on the server, or something of that nature. But back then, we had to be focusing on the code, and so no energy was made to investigate. So I might need some of Paul's time, but I need to go through Michael to get access. That will be Paul, I think Paul Williams, if I do need that time. So hopefully it's still up and running and there's no issues. But if there are, then that would then need some internal in-house resources to allocate time to make that happen. And we just jump over those hurdles and get the rest done. But no, thank you, Louise. It was a good session. I really appreciate it.
It's good.
And don't think that Dave's not crying at nighttime. Oh my gosh, this code. There's a lot of energy gone into it. I've not had my exhale moment yet, but for me, that comes when I see that I've done the work, and it's of a good standard, and it will deliver what it needs to deliver for you. At that point, I can exhale. But right now, it's kind of blinkers on and focus on what needs to be done to complete this project for you.
Cool. That's brilliant. And thanks so much, Dave. It's really sort of...
It's been a lot.
It's just so cool seeing it all come together at the last, final stages. It's just brilliant.
Well,
can't wait. The team are so excited to get going with using it as well.
Well, hopefully they'll have some good things to say once it's there. But step by step, we've got to just do that work first.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
All right. Well, if you do,
right. You have a lovely evening.
Gonna try.
Cool.
You too.
Jolly good. All right then. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care now. Thanks, Sam.
Cheers, Dave. Bye now.
Bye bye. Bye bye.